rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming. As Trish and I said, we kept reading this board package since we've missed 2 meetings. It felt like Groundhog's Day. But I'm going to ask if it's all right with everyone if we move up the athletic report, so Bill and Bob don't have to stay here until the very end. So we will put that in right after community forum. That's all right with everybody. Okay. All right. I believe we don't have the open choice program. They were unable to attend tonight. That's correct.
They're hoping to come at our next meeting, which is the 23rd.
Yes. Okay, and the annual grants report, the same thing?
We do have the report, and the person who does the grants has class on Tuesday night, so could not make it this evening. So I don't know if there were questions that the board had, and not, she's very willing to come to the next meeting as well.
Do we have questions, or do we want to request that she comes to the next meeting, or what? On the grants report? Mr. Kemp?
Well, my question I asked by email was answered, so I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on the grants report? Okay. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Holt?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second, Mrs. Bush? Any guess?
I'd like to pull R.
Okay, anyone else want to pull anything off the consent agenda? Okay, all those in favor of approving 2.1 item A through Q? All those in favor? It's unanimous. And Mrs. Bush, you pulled R.
Yes, I was not on there, even though I had made motions. I was not listed as a member.
Oh, so you're just not there as attending?
Yes.
But your name's in there as making the motions?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I think that would be an easy fix. Okay. Anyone want to make a motion to approve those minutes as amended? Mrs. Bush? Mr. Holt, second. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. Item 3.1, because this is a special meeting, the Board of Education cannot add or delete agenda items, so we will go right past that. And 3.2, our student representatives are not here. So we are moving right along here. Community forum. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? Opportunity for comments on agenda items, potential future agenda items, or general information provided to the board from citizens and community organizations. Is there anyone who wishes to? So now we'll move on to our ad hoc athletic report. And we'll turn it over to Bob and Phil.
Good evening. I believe you've been supplied with line-by-line response to the committee's report. Many of the items that were on the report have been remedied. We've sought bids where remedies were not available within what we have for budgetary constraints, and Mr. Peluso solicited a budget for an overall athletic field study, which was one of the items that we instructed him to do, and that's, I believe, also been provided to you. The larger items that were addressed by the group, which involved building systems such as air handling units and stuff like that, we included that in the the 6-year capital plan. And at this point, you know, we're working our way through and all the other things that our maintainers do. and remedying what we can with what we have. We've also instructed the custodians to more diligently, we've reviewed, Mr. Paluzzo's reviewed the cleaning protocols in the gym areas with the custodial staff, and has also, refreshed their memory on ordering, independently entering work orders of things that they see. He also reviewed with the athletic folks their input that they can request work orders. So we've gone through and reviewed those things. I'd be happy to answer specific questions, but that's kind of where we've gone.
Mrs. Russell?
I noticed that in every ventilating system, you push it out to 15, 16, and why is that? Can someone answer that? Oh, can someone answer why is that pushed out, the ventilating system?
If I could, through the chair,
Please do.
that is part of the expense to repair all the HVAC that is needed. We put in a request to the capital non-reoccurring portion of the budget. So we wouldn't have that money until the 15-16 budget is.
But if it's a concern now, is there a problem now?
These are design flaws that have existed for, this is stuff that's gone on for a long time. Hasn't, it was brought up as a concern, and it needs to be remedied, but I don't think that it's
A problem?
what's the word? It hasn't been represented to us as a safety problem at this point,
Safety or health.
or a health problem. It's,
So you haven't had anyone complain?
Except for it being written up in the inspection that the athletic committee had done, we have not.
Thank you.
Mrs. Zarn?
Can I ask a couple questions about specifics? Where there was a mention of damp areas or mold infested, and your answer was repainting or whatever. Have you determined the source of the problem? And looking at Rock Hill High School, I'm sorry, page 104,
yeah, those were prior leaks for the most part.
just prior leaks.
Yeah.
So that's been, the leaks have been repaired and then the cosmetic stuff's been taken.
Yeah, and it isn't necessarily mold, it's staining on a ceiling at 20 feet, if it's dark, people put, oh, it's a mold problem, but it's not necessarily a mold problem.
Well, I
water
didn't
stains are dark.
make that up, it just says mold
Yeah.
infested.
Well, that's what they said, mold infested, it's not what we said.
Okay,
That's the line item in the report said, that's mold infested.
Oh, that's what we asked Bill to investigate for the committee.
That was a mold infested.
It was a discoloration.
okay, sorry. There are a number of items, I don't know if you can answer these, that say will be addressed when they're ordered, when the supplies come in. Do you have any idea what kind of time frame that is?
Through the chair. These are supplies or materials that are purchased through the athletic department. So when they order the basketball nets, when they come in, and they supply us with them, we'll put them up.
But nobody's given you any kind of a timeline for when those will be ordered and when they'll be delivered?
No, they haven't.
No. Would that be something that the superintendent could provide for us then? I thought some of the concerns seemed to be legitimate and the answers seemed to be, well, when we get the supplies, the work will be done. Can you confirm whether some things have been ordered and will be ordered and what the time frame is?
I cannot do that, but I can ask Dr. Basel to.
That's what I
get a
meant.
report.
Yeah, I meant, could you get that information?
Absolutely.
One of the concerns that I had is relative to padding. We talked about it briefly, but I've had the opportunity this winter to travel around with a rec team playing basketball, and I pay attention to the gymnasiums that they're going to, and the padding is not only nice padding, but it extends the width of the court. It's not just 6 pads wide, right under the basket. I don't know if that's something that you can address, or,
Again, budgetarily,
Dr.
that's
Pizzell.
from athletics, but I can
Okay.
tell you as a former basketball parent who traveled for 9 years around every middle school, high school gym in the state of Connecticut and 10 other states probably. Mr. Wiley and I used to sit in games and comment on the lack of padding a decade ago, and it's been an issue that just hasn't made a budget, so it just needs to be, it's expensive. Mr. Caluso got some pricing on padding and was,
Well, we haven't received the pricing yet, but I had a company come out a couple weeks ago and they're getting us a pricing.
I'm sure that pricing
it was big
can't
money.
compare to, I understand, but a child taking a header into the
Oh,
wall.
I agree 100%.
Is that something that Dr. Purcell would be handling as well?
That would be ordered through her office, yes.
Could you get that information as well, please? Can I trust the dates that are in here? Some said they'd be completed by January sometime, so those are probably done.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? And we thank you very much for looking into this, working on it, 'cause
Thank you for
I know
getting
the list was probably daunting, but some of it looked like it was not too difficult, so we're glad that we're going in the right direction.
We're making progress on it.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for
coming
getting this
tonight.
in.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will move on to item 5.0, 5.1, teacher retirements. Dr. Khan.
I just announced to the board that we have 3 teachers who have chosen to retire this year. One was Mrs. Chase, Deborah Chase, who taught 2nd grade at Center Road School, and the board had provided her with leave this fall, and she has decided that she is retiring as of January 1st. Darby Schwartz is a special education teacher at Center Road School, and she is retiring at the end of this year. And Arthur Wheelock is retiring also at the end of this year, physical education at Rockville High School. He is our 2nd highest in seniority, so not the highest, but the 2nd highest in seniority, and 41 years. So if you would like to accept their resignations and thank them for their service, it's not necessary, but it certainly would be something that you may do.
Well, I don't know if we need a motion, but we do want to thank them, all 3 of them, for their many years of service, because I know Jamie Chase was here for almost 30 years, and I'm sure Darby was also. So we are grateful for all their years and thank them profusely. Thank you. All right, now move on to 6.0 curriculum. 6.1 curriculum report. Mrs. Bush or Mr. Hart, I'm not sure.
Well, I think you want to start, but the curriculum committee met between all the storms we've had. And we have met 2 times recently reviewing the new curriculum for language arts and math. We also had new course proposals and we had name changes, course name changes. The name changes you have a draft of, and the curriculum committee felt that they were a good change, and we supported that. We also reviewed the course proposal summary, and like I said, we looked at the course proposals. We had a lot of time to have some good discussion on them, and we accept the course proposals as they are. I want to get into a little more detail.
Sure, thank you, through the chair. Just one thing I would add to that is that there were a couple questions about, in some cases, some of the new courses were going to be in areas so that we might see a reduction in the high school departments. And Kim Marinan, the head of the guidance department, said that they would like to add these courses into the program of studies as an offering in future years. That if they know that a course could not run this coming year, that the guidance counselors would ensure that their students didn't attempt to sign up for those courses. But they are hopeful that in future years they would be able to offer these. So that's what their plan is, even though they may not run, that they would like to add them to the program of studies. And then same thing with there were some questions about supply lines for a course that may not run. Again, it's not running, that's the estimated supplies. And of course, we wouldn't include those for next year if those courses weren't running.
Do you have any questions? Mr. Kemp?
Thank you. The new course proposals, as you were indicating, often refer to the utilization of existing staff. There are 11 situations where 1.7 staff members will be used for these various courses, and times 11 is just under 2 FTEs, as it turns out. Usually in the past, when we had these course offerings and name changes, we were also shown what would be deleted or what course would be expiring. And it's hard to understand how you're going to offer these various courses, in this case 11 of them, without showing what I mean, you can't just make more time, so something has to be going away. So the question is, what's going away?
Mr.
Through the chair. That is a great question. At this time, we are not doing anything for the program of studies, but as is current practice, there are courses in this year's course of study that are not being offered because of low enrollment or no enrollment. In other words, we can offer course X last spring, 0 students sign up for it. It's not scheduled, there's no staffing for that course, there's no supplies for that course, but it remains in the program of studies. The purpose of adding these new courses, of course, is to enhance the offerings at the high school, make it more comprehensive, make it more appealing to students. And it would be almost like a free market system, if you will, that we're going to go through the course selection process now. And as we go through those selections and we start making some tough choices in later April, say, when we get the course selections from students, they're going to have to make a determination at the building level which courses will run based on their staffing levels at that time.
Well, will you tell the board what those courses are? Because some of our decisions in the past had to do with whether or not we thought a course should go or not. Sometimes we voted to keep a course that was recommended for deletion. I mean, it has happened. So without just saying, well, then just run with it, we'd like to know what you're planning on deleting.
I think the answer to that is it all depends on enrollment. So
Well,
if only 2 students sign up for one of these classes, that course won't run, and something else might run. So they will work it out with the number of staff that we have and the number that sign up for the course.
And if I may
Is
add
that
one
correct?
more thing, also remember we are increasing the staff load from 5 courses to 6 courses next year. So that it could account for some of those increases.
All right, then if I could, I have a few more detailed questions, and
Sure.
may I? Okay. In the descriptor, you have made notations when you're going to use existing staff. Now, in the case of in English, in pop culture, you have a course name change only, but that you're going to require 0.17 of staff. That's the only one where you're asking for staff when you're only changing the name. So I don't know if that's an aberration or what, but I just thought I'd point that out.
Through the chair,
If you just change the name of a course, you don't need more people.
We're not changing.
I believe if you look closely, the course name change, there is no backup paper back in support materials in the packet. The support materials in this packet, which we reviewed, are for the new course, There's actually two courses there. There are two parts of a different course, if you will. One is the pop culture impact of movies, TVs, and toys, and the other one is pop culture impact of music, video games, and novels. They're two separate courses.
Yeah.
One is an existing course,
Mhm.
which it just said pop culture, so they're changing that name, and now they're adding an additional course. And that
Yeah.
would be the additional FTEs.
Well, no, in each one, you say the impact is .17 in each of them. Now, I can see why you would have 1.17 for the new one, but I don't know why the next one would as well.
Can you please tell me where you're referring to that 1.7?
The pop culture, the explanation part, yep.
It says FTE .17, but I believe that's because the teachers are now going to be teaching 6 classes instead of 5. So it's going to be the same personnel, but they're picking up one more class.
Well, I hope so. It's the only one, all the other courses that simply say they're a name change, there's no FTE implication there, thank you. That's the only one where there is. I'm just pointing that out to you. I realize they're all
And
doing
it may
courses.
be a mistake, I apologize.
All right, now, if I could go on to something else, then there's in the art department, that's page 2, there's a course for jewelry being offered. Now, in that case, that's requiring new staff, and in that case, they're asking for .67 of a staff member, and as new. That's not an existing staff one, that's a net new gain of 2/3 of a person. And I don't remember seeing that in the budget. I could be wrong. So I'm just asking for clarification on the jewelry course, if you would, please. Are you in fact adding 2/3 of a person to do that?
No, as I asked Mrs. Marion that question, and it turns out that the teacher who was qualified to teach that was teaching with us this year, and they thought that that person would continue on next year, but they're leaving. So therefore, that class will not be able to run because we don't have someone qualified to teach it. But they would still like it on the books, so in the future, they might have a teacher who is qualified to teach that course.
Okay, well, have we budgeted for it?
No, because it won't be offered next year.
Will be offered. Well, and that's the answer to that, okay. All right, and okay, 2 more questions, please. Under the biology and the applied statics, they are not asking for any impact whatsoever. And I don't understand that. How is that possible? Yeah, in the science department.
Forensic science 1 and 2, is that what you're asking about?
Biology and chemical forensic science and applied static and dynamic engineering. There's no request at all for.
If I may, through the chair, when I was originally received all these new course proposals, for the most part, those estimated costs of implementing this course,
Right.
they were blank for all of the courses. I sent them back to the department chairs for editing to include estimated cost of supplies, potential impact on other courses, both vertically and horizontally within the department, without the department, as well as the FTEs. And my directive to them was just put in the FTEs, hopefully using existing staff, but also, to be upfront and frank with the board to say if you're going to be requesting new FTEs to cover that course. In this case, the science did not get done like that. You see the 3 courses. So those, when the packet was returned to me for the original board meeting when we had the subcommittee, those were not filled in. There was not time to send them back to be exchanged. Essentially, all the courses would require a 1.7. Now, whether that's existing staffing or new is going to be, is going to be a subject of how we go through the course selection process through the high school scheduling.
Okay, so the fact that you sent them back when they said none, this one just didn't get refreshed adequately?
I have a feeling that this is the older file that got sent back to me rather than a new one. I know the department chair, and she did work on that. So, time for printing to meet with the subcommittee, we were able to make that change.
Okay,
So it would be a 1.7 for those 3 courses. Just to point out with the art file.
It's .17.
Sorry, 0.17, not 1.7,
Don't want to scare people.
no, 0.17. And just as a side note, there's a typo for the jewelry course, that should, again, also be a 0.17, not a 0.67. So that was a
0.67?
That was a typo.
Okay. Well, just so you know, we're watching. Now, I have to ask, in the mathematics, in the, so many packages here. Kind of get lost in there. There's a, in the descriptor of the mathematics course, students will develop an understanding of the meaning and processes of measurement, etc., and the transitivity principle for indirect measurement. Would you please tell me what that is? I have no idea what transitivity principle is.
Which course is
Which
this?
course is that?
Mathematics.
There's 2 courses there.
What's the name?
Is it science, technology, or art and architecture?
I'm sorry, not at the high school. I'm switching packets on you now. This one.
The curriculum?
Oh, kindergarten.
So, one of the, not kindergarten, I guess it's, in this case, it's grade 1, but it's transitivity principle for indirect measurement. I just, wow. What is that?
Dr.
Mary,
Miller
you were a
might be able to
math
answer
teacher.
that
What
for
is the
us.
transitivity
Yeah.
principle? I don't need to know tonight. Will you get back to me?
We will get back. I will phone a friend.
I'm just dying
I
to
can
know.
get back
answer
to you.
right now.
Pardon?
I can answer right now.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the associative property and the transitive property? Associative property means if you were adding 3 numbers, 4 plus 5 plus 6, you could add 4 plus 5 and then add 6. And it would be the same as if you added 5 plus 6 and then added 4. So you could associate different numbers in multiplication and in addition. You could associate different numbers together. Transitive means that you can add 4 plus 5 and get the same thing as 5 plus 4. So you can change the position of the numbers, and you can do the same in mathematics. So it's just changing the position.
Thank you.
Hey,
No problem.
in layman's term, it's turnaround fact.
There you go.
I teach it all the time.
David, do you have any more questions?
Nope. That's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
does anybody else have some questions? Mrs. Arndt?
I just want to ask about minimums. I understand adding these classes, or these courses to the course selection, it doesn't mean that they'll all be running. I know it has to do with staff availability, but is there a bare minimum that you'll run a class? Is it not, is it a combination of teacher availability and number? Tell me how that's decided.
Through the chair. Again, depends upon the course level, depends upon the physical space for that course. Science labs are limited by OSHA standards to 24 students. If we have a culinary lab, the stations I think are limited to 14 stations. A clay class, for instance, I think there's only 14 stations at the clay class. But there's some other considerations. If this is a culminating course, let's say a science student has taken all honors courses and now is an AP course that is the culmination of years of study, and there may be 5, 6 students in there, that's a judgment call from the administration to say, to exclude those students from this culminating experience that will enrich their high school experience in favor of perhaps some other decision need to be made in the science department. So what's going to be happening over the next few months is that we're going to be getting in the course requests from students. We can run simple tallies from that. In other words, 200 students signed up for, the basic English courses in 9th grade. We know that we're going to need an X amount of FTEs. But part of that process is to determine, those class sizes along with running, our fantastic creative writing courses. We want to make sure that those are fully staffed, so there's going to have to be some exchange there of what class size versus those electives. So the simple answer is for your core area courses, I believe the board guidelines are 22 through 25 is the recommended range. And then your specialty courses go down from there. And then, I hope that answered your question.
It does, but it leaves lots of wiggle room so that you can run courses with 3 or 4 kids in them that the board might not think is smart, but the administration thinks it's a good choice for those kids.
Yes.
And all of the, I guess, the courses that you want to add but don't actually plan to run, they'll be in the course catalog. So that looks like they're all options, but they're not really all options. So do you know what I mean? Like, at any given time, there may be a number of those courses that are on the books but have no intention of running them, like jewelry. Is that how it's done?
Through the chair, in my experience in high schools, yes. There are often times where you're going to offer courses, and depending upon that year's class, they can expand or contract or not run. And depending upon the particular district, I'm not familiar with how many years some of these courses haven't run, but for instance, in my last district, if a course didn't run for 4 years, it was then deleted from the course catalog as an option.
Maybe that's something the board ought to consider doing then. Think about, because to offer them is one thing, but to actually run them is another. So I don't know how comprehensive we look just because they're in a course catalog. Is that a discussion the board could have at some point?
Could we get a report from Mrs. Vernon about what courses have not been run in several years? Mr. Holt? I'm
Yes.
sorry, are you done? This is up there.
My question is regarding the professional development and curriculum development for those new courses that may not be offered. And I guess from a budgeting perspective, have we budgeted to do that work this year? Or are we planning on waiting until next year to do that because we know we're not going to be able to offer those courses this year? What kind of consideration have we given to that?
Through the chair. Just to remind the board that we still have our full budget for curriculum writing, and that we've again planned to do the Summer Curriculum Writing Academy immediately following the last day of school, whatever that happens to be, in June. But it'll be running for 5 days after the last day of school, and I forget what the last day is now. It's
17.
The 7th. Thank you, Dr. Conway. So it'll be running 5 days, and we did plan in this case to shift over to finalizing some small pieces for language arts and mathematics, but again, that's more of the assessment pieces and some of the instructional strategies and support materials. But the bulk of the funds we want to start going into social studies, science, world language, as well as offering up to any other area that needs some curriculum writing. It's up to the department chairs to make those decisions. I typically give them some guidelines as to how many hours we can afford for their department. So if they know that they need to spend time, in this case art, they need to spend time on a clay curriculum, for instance, and they know that the jewelry course will run, they will then use the time for that course that will run and needs revision and or enhancement.
Does anybody else have any questions? Mr. Colleen?
With respect to the iPhoneography, it mentions under cost section, and it says 20 iPod touches from the IT department. Are those ones that are previously in their stores, or is that something that will have to be procured through them?
Through the chair, I don't have an answer for you, but I can find out.
We did talk about that. We asked that question, and we do have the Apple Card that we had the iPod touches, and they would be available. And that's what they were planning on using.
Fair enough, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I think we can break this into 3 different motions, if you're ready to vote. If you'd rather not vote tonight and wait until our February 23rd meeting, you can do that if you want more time to digest all of this. But one motion I would suggest is approving the name changes. Second one would be to approve or not approve the new courses. And the third would be the K through 5 curriculum piece. So I don't know what your pleasure is. Mr. Holt?
I make the motion that we approve the name changes submitted and recommended by the curriculum committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Bush. Any discussion or comments on the name change for the courses? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, I don't know if you're interested in the approving the new course proposals. That's another possible motion. Mr. Wu?
And make the motion that we approve the K-5 curriculum changes.
Does anybody have any, oh wait, we need a second on that, I'm sorry. Mrs. Bush?
Second.
Anybody have any questions? We didn't get into it. Now, this is not the full curriculum. Mr. Burt gave us a abridged, he just gave us the first 2 pages of the curriculum. The real curriculum is this big here. So, but he figured you might not have time to read it all. So if you would like to have more time to read more detail, then we can hold off on that. Otherwise, we could move forward with this vote. Anybody have any questions? Okay. All those in favor of approving the English and mathematics curriculum for K through 5? It's unanimous. Okay, anyone interested in making a motion on the new course proposals? Yes.
Pardon me, there are other documents than K through 5 in there. I just want to make sure that we approve those as well. There's
Oh, sorry, what else?
there's a number of documents in ELA going up to 12th grade.
Yes.
Math
Oh,
goes
that's
up
right.
to Algebra 1. I just wanted to make sure that we have the full approval from the board for the hard work that all of our staff did over the past 12 months.
So is it 6 through?
6 through 12.
Yes, 6 through 12, okay.
So you could just say in the packet.
6 through 12 in the packet.
Okay. Mr. Wool? Is there a second? Mrs. Bush?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Kemp?
Yeah, I really do favor the PE mentoring course. That's a wonderful idea. Wish I thought of it. But the intention is to work with the kids who are challenged and so on. And I think it's a great course experience for them to do. I have a question on the course that's called Morality. I read that very carefully. Now, who is going to teach that? And how do we make sure that what's intended remains the curriculum delivered year over year?
Point of order, I don't,
Yeah. That's one of these courses.
okay.
It is, it's in the motion. It's grade 9
Okay.
English. So, Mr. Burt, would you like to answer that? Or do you want Mrs. Shaker to do that?
So grade 9.
Hold on.
A team of grade 9 teachers actually developed that curriculum this summer, and I've already started to work on the assessments for that as well. They were very intrigued by that title, and the 4 units, if you look at each of them, one of them also is morality, the other one is, I think there's responsibility and transformation. So they look to the 9th graders to really being more self-reflective as they come into the high school, and they felt that it was really very, very appropriate for that particular grade level to be exploring those topics. As far as Mr. Kemp's question, I think they will assess how the curriculum was delivered, how the students reacted to it, and curriculum is obviously always a marathon. We're consistently looking to see how we can improve it. So over the summer, I think as they teach the units, they keep notes on how the units are going, how the assessments are, and how the students are reacting to the material, and will certainly revise it as necessary. I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Kemp.
Well, and I did ask who was going to teach it. Have you?
The grade 9 teachers, I don't have the names exactly of the ones that are scheduled to teach those, that are teaching those classes, but I can get them for you.
Mr. Burt, you want to add to that?
If I may. Thank you. Just if you also take a look at 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade English courses, you'll see a sequence of theme. And it was important to the English department at the high school that they built on the theme. In terms of morality, are we teaching morality? No. Are we having students explore morality through a variety of interesting and intense exploration of serious issues? Because developmentally it's appropriate for 9th graders to begin doing that, start looking at themselves in terms of their own moral compass. Then you look at 10th grade, they've moved into community now. What does it mean to become a part of a community? How does the community impact individuals? Can individuals impact the community at large? So some bigger questions now moving beyond yourself. In 11th grade, now you're getting into society, which your community they felt was really more, for instance, Rockville as a community. Now they've moved into the greater society. And a great question, what is the American dream? And how does the individual play in that? And then finally in 12th grade, you're getting into what are the personal and social responsibilities of an individual. Again, looking beyond yourself into how do you impact community? How can you, are you responsible to impact your community and your society? So you can see that there was a tremendous amount of thought in the department that it was sequencing their variety of topics, but all again, they felt they can use these themes, and then each teacher, and depending upon the student sitting in front of them, can customize those topics that they're going to be exploring to the interests of their students and to the varying grade levels and ability levels sitting in front of them.
Possibly the course should be called Ethics and Morality. I don't know, but, well, thank you for the explanation. I guess I'm concerned, and maybe other board members are, that this particular course could stray from its original intent, and we would probably rather not let that happen at some point. So we would want to see this reviewed frequently.
Okay. Any other questions on the new curriculum, Mr. Kalina?
Following on to Mr. Kemp's comments about the morality, would you care to describe some of the subject matters that a 9th grader might be investigating through the classroom discussions, just to give us a sense of what matters to a 9th grader that you had discussed?
If you, through the chair, if we take a look at the full document, again, to save paper, we didn't give you the full documents. It's a ream of paper. But I can give you one of the focus questions. I just opened to one, Unit 3, responsibility. One of the questions is, how do individual roles conflict with societal pressures? You're a 9th grader going into high school, there is a lot of peer pressure. So how do you as an individual deal with that? And you can do through literature, there's a variety of texts that they can explore, both fiction and nonfiction, to explore those themes. And again, the point is not to tell you that's right, that's wrong as a teacher. It is to help guide them through the process of sorting through information, sorting through different resources, and coming to their conclusions. But most importantly, as they say in the cover page, is to essentially back their claims. Claims is a common core word, but their arguments, your position. Why are you making that position? Is it better to be a part of a group, or is it better to be an individual? Is there a happy medium? These are the things that are struggled all the way up through Supreme Court cases. Supreme Court justices deal with what is that line between personal freedom and the rights of society. And it's a good place to start in 9th grade as they transition into adulthood.
To follow on to that, if presumably there would be discussions within the classroom to discuss the particular item of the day that they're discussing, what if somebody has a contrarian viewpoint? Could that be possible point for bullying or concerns that may have an impact outside the classroom?
Again, there's always concerns for that in any class. That's why we trust our professionals, our teachers, to make sure that they monitor those conversations, that they monitor their students, they understand and know their students. That is one of our core beliefs in the district, that you know your students. And so if you know your students, you know that someone feels that they're uncomfortable with that, then you would react to that. And again, as a ninth grade teacher, you would keep the conversation appropriate to a ninth grade level. We currently have classes now in the 12th grade where they're dealing with very difficult adult concepts, but it is part of our responsibility in a democracy to help them struggle with these issues and help them learn how to deal with morality and ethics. And if we don't teach them that, then we're doing a disservice to them. But we have to do it in a careful, controlled, and safe way, and that is the responsibility of our teachers, and we have faith in those teachers. The amazing thing, having taught similar courses like this, oftentimes students having struggled with these things will come to you with problems because they're now struggling with them. They're seeing that others struggle with them in open conversation. Whereas before, if you didn't talk about these things and you just discussed Shakespeare without any real delving into the morality of Shakespeare, then you keep it at that surface level. Now that you're opening up these topics, students feel, oh wait, I'm not the only person who feels like this. And oftentimes they come to you typically after class or before school with those concerns. So it is an opportunity to show students that it's okay to maybe not think like your peers, and that's a good thing. That we encourage them independence and independent thinking.
That's kind of what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Glad I said.
Anybody have any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the new curriculum in grades 6 through 12 in English and math. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Do we want to do anything with the new course proposals this evening or not? Mr. Kemp?
Well, a question, I don't have a problem with the new course proposals so long as what is going away eventually gets to us sooner than later. That's my feeling. I'm just used to seeing the ones that are going away presented at the same time. So this is a kind of a departure from that, but I can live with it.
Well, do we want to wait till our February 23rd meeting, then we might know which courses haven't been run in several years by now. So we'll put this back on the February 23rd agenda then. Okay? All right. Thank you. And we will move on to item 6.2. The Northwest Evaluation Association measures of academic progress.
Through the chair. What you have in front of you, as you recall, back last year, we purchased a new standardized assessment system to help us get an understanding of our students' achievement across the district. The purpose of that, again, was to come up with a system that was going to be reliable and valid, and we could track students over time to show growth that wasn't different from grade to grade or from school to school or from level to level. And it had a larger norm reference pool, if you will, of data. And we were able to get that through our NWEA or NEWA map system. As I gave a presentation on the details, I won't go into that. What we do have in front of you now are the results. And again, this is one set of results. There's a tremendous amount of information. We do have the trainers coming back in next Tuesday, 17th, to train our K through 9 teachers, not just how to look at the data, but how to use it in terms of instruction, and that's the key. We didn't want just a blank system, said, oh, that's nice, here's your students' data. We wanted that additional piece, and that's really the focus of this company. It's not just to give you the assessment system, but to give you the training behind it, the understanding behind it, and to targeting information for your students. What you have in front of you is an aggregate of that by grade. So the first that you have is mathematics. It'll tell you the percentage of students at grade level. And you'll see at the top it also says fall assessment. In a typical year with the MAP system, we would do a fall, winter, and spring. We got started late this year because of our Aspen implementation. So we are doing a late fall, if you will, and a spring assessment. So we will not have that second assessment. A couple of things to note that are important, and the NWA folks will tell you this as well, that this is the first iteration of this. So there's some good data here, but as you give it more iterations of it over time, it becomes more accurate. Because you sit a child down in front of it, a 5th grade student, and it knows it's a 5th grade student. It says that first question kind of at the right 5th grade level. That student might be 2 grade levels above, 2 grade levels below, and it takes some time for that assessment system to get to that accurate level. When that child sits down in spring, it'll know that child, and if you have their ending point from the fall assessment, so that now it can bounce around much more narrowly within a band of questions to get even more accurate information. We also had, it was a spread in terms of how the window was, how long the window was open. So we had some students taking it 1 week, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, we had other students taking it. So we're going to be working on logistics and narrowing that down. But again, it was the first time, and I do have to report that it went very well. I have to thank our principals and our teachers for really working that through. So we wanted to give this to you as a first look, if you will, a benchmark. We'll get more accurate data as we get this, and again, the great thing about this is the data is available the next day. So as a class takes this assessment, we're able to dive into this the very next day, and when we close the window for the district, it aggregates it for you for the entire district by the next day. So again, in front of you, you have math, that's page 1. This is across the district for all kindergartners, all 1st graders, all 2nd grades, etc. By school. So at the bottom, you'll see the 5 elementary schools. We do not have Leveland Hill School there because the number's so small that percentages aren't useful in that case. The next page, it breaks it down by school instead of across the district by grade. It'll show you, for instance, the top left-hand corner, Center Road School. It'll show you progression by grade. The next page is an aggregate for all district results, K through 9. You can see some trends there. Next page, you see map reading, percentage of students at grade level by kindergarten broken down by school. The next page is the entire school quick glance, K through 5. And again, you'll see the aggregate there for the district results for all kindergartners, all 1st grades. The last piece, you'll notice it's only 3rd and 4th and 5th grades. The language assessment is only given after 2nd grade, so we don't have K through 2 for that. That's language usage, more grammar. And then the following page, again, you'll see it by school, by grade, and then full district results.
I have a question. When it says percent of students at grade level, are they saying at grade level for what you would expect a student to be in the fall, or at the end of the school year?
That's correct. Thank you for asking that question. What I forgot to tell you is that along with the assessment is provided the expected score, if you will, for fall, expected score for winter, expected score for spring. And the lower grades, kindergarten, it's called a RIT score. The expected score could see up to 15-point growth from the fall to spring. As you get in the older grades, the band becomes much more narrower. The growth over a year might be 1.5 points. So what this does tell us, though, is we can be very accurate. And so if we have a 9th grade student that gets a particular score that shows that they're somewhere in fall, winter of 7th grade, that gives us very good information that will help us and help that teacher and make sure that they are getting good resources for that student, the appropriate text level, etc., and if necessary, some additional help.
Mrs. Bush?
Did you set, through you, did you set the norm, or was it nationally normed?
I'm sorry, that is provided by NWA. That is nationally normed.
May I ask, is it like a percentile? Is it like a...
It is a specific score. For instance, 1st grade in fall for reading, it could be 215. And
Okay.
if you're a student, if you're at 216, you're above grade level, and if you're 214, you're below grade level.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. R?
The results don't seem very encouraging to me. Is this what you would expect to see, these kinds of results? My first question. And a number of years ago, I think that the board, the superintendent, the district made a commitment to all 3rd graders to be reading on grade level. And it doesn't appear that we're close to achieving that. I'm wondering, is the picture as dismal as it appears to be to me? Or is this what you would expect to see?
Like the superintendent.
Want to toss that ball over here?
Oh, phone a friend.
I would agree with you. They are not scores that I would write home about at all. I think they're consistent with what we have done on CMT and CAPT, a little better. The ones that I found the most interesting where they are by school. And you can see in the 5 elementary schools that grade 1, where we had all-day kindergarten for the first time last year, significantly outperformed the other grade levels by the percent of students. This is the first time I've seen us break 70%. We have been stuck in the low 60s, not quite 2/3 for many, many years. And our curriculum, which was just approved tonight, is just being implemented for the first time. So I do expect incredible gains as we go forward, as we offer the same guaranteed curriculum for every child. But there are some disappointing. Interesting, you know that the scores that we've been reporting on our local assessments, which we score ourselves, have shown at Northeast School that these scores have improved. And this is the NWEA, where it's each student on a computer, and so you can see that those have improved as well when you look in comparison with the other schools. I know that Mrs. Green has received many phone calls from her colleagues across the district to say, "What are you doing?" And teachers have been calling each other across the district. So there's a lot of good things happening, and I expect them to continue to happen. I was pleased, I was crossing my fingers, but pleased when first grade kind of outscored the other grade levels at all the schools. I said, okay, all right, so this is for real, and it is going to change. So I'm optimistic, but I would not. I wouldn't send them home to my mother.
Mrs. Russell King. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have?
I did.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You have the floor, go ahead.
Can you comment on the expectation about all third graders reading at grade level? I mean, we've been hearing that for a while now.
Absolutely, that is our goal. We want all third graders reading on grade level by the end of grade 3. There are many different strategies that we've employed to get there. We're not there yet. We are using reading recovery, the reading teachers, using the reading coaches, using models, using Reader's Workshop. This is our first year. We had our training last summer. So there are a lot of things that we're doing in order to get there.
So what's a reasonable expectation, though? I mean, we set this goal a while ago. When would you expect that we can start?
Change takes, I would say, 4 to 6 years is what change takes. We have done a lot of change already, so we're well into that. But we are really probably 3 years into it because we've just been able to purchase assessment systems and just be able to start our Reader's Workshop training. This summer we'll do Writer's Workshop training. So we're getting there. We've moved ahead. We're still doing technical changes right now. It's the adaptive changes, the changes that teachers need to make in their classroom that are much more difficult to make. And we're getting there.
Mrs. Russell.
I too commend Northeast. You look at these graphs and Northeast really did a good job. But Maple Street, I'm concerned about Maple Street. And what other things can we put in place to bring? Because across the board, they're down, they lost.
I agree with you. I know that Ms. Trentolo has asked if she could present to the board on turnaround schools and what things are necessary, what things are in place, what things are going to be in place or need to be in place. And so I've said absolutely, we need to do that, and we need to do that before the Alliance grant comes around to the board. So that will probably happen in March. When you look at just the second page, which has by school, and you look at Maple Street, it looks as if we do a little bit of mathematics in grades 1 and 2 and 3, and then we focus on other things. That's a guess, a wild guess, but that's certainly the way it looks to me. I think that's not reflective of our students. I know they have the capacity, every child in the district has the capacity to learn at high levels. This is not reflective of of what they have the ability to do. So we're doing a lot of things at Maple Street. Ms. Trentolo, her problem of instructional practice this year is around rigor. It's absolutely fascinating. I'll ask her to share that evening as well. One of the things that the teachers did, just to go on a little bird luck here, is about 3 months ago when they were just starting their look at rigor, they collected tasks that students were doing across the district. And they had been studying Webb's depth of knowledge, which breaks rigor down into 4 levels. And all of the tasks were in levels 1 and 2, most of them in level 1, which is the bottom level. They then did it again about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so about 2 months into it, into their study and how their discussions on how they can ramp up the tasks that we're asking students to do. And it was like a bar graph. The majority of items were in 2, but there were many in 3, level 3 for the first time, and then fewer in level 1. So it was very, she took a picture of the chart that they had drawn and sent it. I said, wow, movement. So I think in moving the tasks to much more rigorous tasks at Maple Street and across the district, our students are going to achieve at higher levels. Our expectations have not been high of our students, and we need to do that. And Maple Street staff is completely on board with that. They're very pleased.
Thank you.
One of the things in my school, we also started a new universal assessment on the computer. And one thing we found was the first getting was a bit of a learning curve. And the second time the students sat down, it was just amazing. They sat down, they were logged on, got right to business, and you can see that the next time it was given, that there was much more confidence to be able to go through the test and be successful. So I think the next time you see it, you're also going to maybe see a little improvement just because it's easier for them, they understand what they're doing, and we saw an improvement in the scores as well. Because the first time going through it, it's a little daunting to some of the younger ones. But I'm hoping to see a little improvement just because it's going to be easier for them to go through, and years on as well.
Looking at the district results across you got the mathematics, you got the reading, and you got the language, and there might be another one that I missed. But looking at those 3 at the very least, I've noticed that from going from 8th to 9th grade, there seems to be a consistent drop-off in results. How would you attribute that result? Is it because adjusting to new schools, an inconsistency between programs between the middle and the high school? Starting off in high school at a lower rate than the previous year, to me, looks like that could be a situation that might be improved on or fixed, because it's, in some cases, there are over 10% difference, in one case, 20%. That right there looks like something we should look at.
Either way.
I'll take this one. Through the chair. We have the same concern, and we spoke with Mr. Rocket, and he has the same concern. And in speaking with some of his department chairs, we believe that perhaps this was not taken as seriously by some of the students as in other grades. We're not quite sure what the difference is, but when you think about it logically, the same teachers, mostly the same teachers in 8th grade doing the same thing, and this, the assessment is given, it was given in early December, there's not that much time to see that much drop. You can't really account for this through programmatic or through instruction. That's why we think that's really an anomaly. There's a couple things in here that we think are anomalies. I look at 3rd grade at Maple Street. We know there was some testing irregularities there. There was some disruptions. I think there was a fire alarm. So we know that there's some of these things will come out in the wash, if you will, over time. So we are hopeful for significant improvement there, mostly through, I think, educating our staff a little bit better about this, educating our students and our families about it, and understanding that they are not just taking this as yet another test, that teachers are actually going to use this information, and that yes, you will get this home in the mail, as a parent. So it wasn't just another, a test that they're taking, that we will be using this information. So we hope that we'll see a significant improvement there. If you have anything to add to that, Dr. Conley?
Yeah, we had many, many discussions about that as well in the 9th grade, and it just doesn't make sense. And so we're unsure of how serious it was taken. As a 9th grader, it's not too cool to go in and have to go and sit, and now you're doing something, and oh, my buddy next to me finished more quickly than I did, well, I better be done. And so now I'm done. And it was amazing. We see the amount of time students take on the test. And so Mr. Rocket even mentioned to us, gee, it only took you 16 minutes to do that test. That's pretty amazing. And so, so the students are getting the message, and we're quite shocked that we knew how long it took them to take the test. And so I expect quite a bit of difference this year. And then second.
Mr. Ken? Anybody else have any? I just want to say I'm glad to hear that some of the other elementary principals want to find out what's happening in Northeast, because something's working there, and hopefully that will be shared with the other schools, because it looks like they'll need a little bit of help. Okay, we'll move on to general business. Item 7.1, first reading of policies. Does anybody have any questions about those? 5 policies. Mrs. Arndt.
The agenda construction. I've never been a fan of the folders that we get with information in them that we need to use for that evening's meeting. So I'm wondering if the paragraph about agenda and supporting materials will be distributed to board members prior in sufficient time to allow. Does that mean that we won't be getting things in this packet that we have to use at that evening?
You're saying that we won't get it to the night of the meeting?
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Well, we try not to, but certainly if some information comes forward that we think you should have, you can always table an item or remove it from the agenda. But we try, that's not a plan of ours. We try very hard to put all the information into the packet. And we actually have a piece of paper for an item that's coming up in our packet tonight in the yellow folder. That's just a summary. But
So
we
this
do try.
doesn't change, this doesn't
I know,
change. This policy
We
doesn't
could just
change.
not give it, but that wouldn't be responsible on our part, so.
But we could also, I didn't think of that, we could also table an agenda item to the next
Absolutely.
meeting when we can review
And
the
I think the
material.
board has done that even this year.
Yes, Mr. Gill?
It's just a first reading, but I'd like to turn to, where we go here, sorry. 9240, page 1. Under board member development, the final paragraph on page 1, I have no problem with it, but I do think that we should just revise the wordings ever so slightly. I think the words, where it begins, if authorized to attend, it should say, if authorized by the board to attend, etc., and then goes on, and reimbursement is approved. It says by the entire board, and I think that could theoretically mean that one person could stop someone from getting reimbursement. So it really should say is approved by a majority vote of the board, that members would be reimbursed. So when this comes out, next time we would vote on it, I would hope that we could make those minor changes at that time.
This is the bottom of page 1 of 2.
Yeah, if, it should say if authorized by the board, and then strike the word entire board to a majority vote of the board.
In that same, or in the same bylaws of the Vernon Board of Education, on the second of two, in policy 9327, when it says accessing email, it says different things that we could use, and I'm not sure if we still even use modems. That might not be something that we need to have in there, because, Dean, you can probably help me on this. Do people actually use modems anymore? So we might want to strike a modem.
What line you want?
Oh, 2 of 2 on 9327, the bylaws of Vernon Board of Education, meetings, accessing email, and it talks about
Which line?
the third line, well, the third line, the first 2 words, a modem. And my concern is that I don't think anybody actually uses a modem anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, that, I think Ms. Bush is correct, that I think the intent of that paragraph is to say that if needed, that the Board of Ed supplies, you know, or would make available, right? And I don't believe a modem would be needed with the modern internet that we have today. I think you're right that we probably would be looking for the Board of Ed to supply a modem. But, my comment on that section, or somewhere in that particular 9327, I wasn't sure whether it's under accessing email or somewhere else in there under the guidelines, is that the Board of Ed provides an email address for board members to use. And I think it'd be good to have that as part of this, this particular policy, because I believe I would encourage board members to use the Board of Ed email address over a work email address, if they don't have a personal email address. And so, and I think showing that in this policy and making sure that it's known that that's available, and to encourage the use of the Board of Ed email address supplied, I think is important.
Where would you recommend that we add that?
Well, that's, I wasn't sure if it should go under the accessing email, because we say in an effort to make sure that everybody has access. You know, there's certain things that we'd be willing to do, and I don't know whether, that's what I was trying to see, is where would be the best place to put that.
I would suggest the second paragraph on the first page. I'm not sure how we word it, like after the first sentence, we put something in there saying, the Board of Ed will provide.
Yeah, because that way there, you know, I know other boards of education members in other districts have run into problems because they use a business email address, and that subjects your employer to the freedom of information. If the press wanted to say, hey, let me see every single email you've ever received from the Board of Education, your employer is responsible for producing that information. So that's the reason why I say using the board address or personal should be encouraged, and we should discourage using a work address.
Mr. Flynn?
As a comment to follow on to that, I would venture to say that we should encourage exclusive use of a board email as opposed to even our personal, just for the aforementioned reasons, because it opens up other personal information potentially to FOI inspection.
All right, well, those are additions that we can put on for next time, because this is a first reading, and we'll have time to think about it, and we'll vote on it on February 23rd. Anybody have anything else they'd like to make suggestions? Okay, thank you. We will move on to item 7.2, approval of the Smart Start grant application. Mrs. Bloom, Dr. Howard?
Thank you. As Mrs. Buell is getting prepared to share this with you, there are 2 grant applications here, and this would bring to a total of 5 funding sources for preschool in Vernon. We would love to be able to offer universal preschool. We don't have that at this point, but this does open up more slots for our students. But it would bring to 5 the number of funding sources, and that, of course, is concerning, considering that these are grants, and so any of them can go away at any time. I'll turn this over to Mrs. Buell.
Thank you. I'll just start by saying that there were, as you know, well, first of all, you don't know. In your packet, this is just a supplemental document that was put in there this evening, just so as I speak about a variety of funding sources and numbers, excuse me, you have something to look at, but we currently have, we're obligated to provide preschool programming for students with disabilities. And so that might be 3- and 4-year-old students with disabilities that need some kind of specialized instruction. Those are students that might come to us from birth to 3, or they might be students that we are getting referred to us from the community. And so we have an obligation to provide a program. We've had programs for years. It's the law. We have programs for years. Best practice provides opportunities for students with disabilities and students without disabilities to interact and learn together. That is the model that we use in Vernon. Several years ago, when we created the Vernon Preschool Collaborative, we merged with, or we collaborate with EastCon Head Start. So we have a certain number of EastCon Head Start students in the program as well. In addition to that, a couple of years ago, we added in school readiness funded slots. So we currently have, if you're looking at that sheet in the 2014-15, in the left-hand column of your sheet, we have funding sources that offer 15 half-day programs in Vernon. So there are Vernon public school funded teachers and para-educators, there are EastCon funded teachers and paras, and there are school readiness funded teachers and para. So that's what we have currently. They're all half-day programs. This year we did receive a waiver from the Office of Early Childhood to run our school readiness slots 4 days a week, so it's consistent with our other programs. We did need to receive a 1-year waiver from OEC to do that, and we're providing data back to them regarding that kind of waiver and the outcome of what we do on the 5th day. We do a lot of parent trainings and home visits, and so we're providing data to the OEC on that. So along comes the first thing that came to light, and I've got 2 grants here in front of you. The first one in your packet is the Smart Start grant. That was actually the second grant opportunity that we had to apply for. The Smart Start grant, in connection with the other federal expansion grant, provided the opportunity to offer more preschool slots. There's a distinct push from the federal and state government to continue to offer more opportunities for preschoolers. You know, I think we're leading toward a universal pre-K option. Eventually, I think that might be something that gets mandated by the government. So in the kind of steps to get to that, these are some grant opportunities that, as a leadership team, we talked about. Should we go ahead and see if we can participate in these grant opportunities while there is some grant funding to set up these classrooms and to purchase some of the needs that, just to have the funding to create these classes and supplies. So the Smart Start grant, which is in front of you, is designed, that's from the Office of Early Childhood, and that is a school day, school year preschool class. So instead of what we have is 4 days a week, half days, this would be a full day for a full school year, 180 days. The intent of that grant, the funding, the reason that they're coming up with funding for that grant is to reduce the achievement gap between Connecticut's poorest children and their wealthier peers. Also a focus on dual language learners and addressing students with special education needs. On your sheet, it does talk about 60% at or below the 75% poverty level, or 50% of the students enrolled in the program would need to qualify for or be eligible for free and reduced meals. So when the state put this grant out, and there's a variety of things here, when the state put this grant out, they had a needs assessment done and they sent them out to the different communities. And so based on the statistics in Vernon, they are considering whether or not we have the need. So the statistics do show that we have a need. Continue along with this grant. We had discussed the possibility of creating these programs in the district, but you'll see here that the Smart Start grant, we worked collaboratively with Ellen Slobodine from the Vernon Youth Service Bureau and explored the idea of creating these programs in the community. If we were to create more opportunities for preschool in the Vernon public schools, it would hurt the child care providers that are in our community. And then some of those families who might need summer care or vacation child care, those programs wouldn't exist. If we keep taking all the kids out of the community centers, those programs won't exist. So it has a negative impact on our community. It has a negative impact on our community tax base. It would have a negative impact on parents who then needed to find childcare outside of the school year. So we started to explore the opportunity. Could we create this collaborative where we're offering preschool classes in those centers? So there would be Vernon staff, Vernon students, so they'd all come through one identification process, and just like we staff we distribute our preschool kids now, we would do the same thing, but we'd have 3 more options for parents. So the community's agencies, I've had conversations with each of them, and they were all interested in this opportunity and interested in collaborating with the Vernon Public Schools and the Vernon Preschool Collaborative and participating in that. I think in addition to the obvious benefits to the Vernon community, it also provides opportunities for parents who might need before and after school care, who would need summer care. Currently we have students that will attend one of these 3 programs, the Y, the Hockenham program, or the Academy of Arts and Learning. The children, these little 3 or 4-year-old children will attend a child care, be bused to the school, and then bused back to child care. And so creating multiple opportunities or multiple transitions for these children, which some children can handle better than others. So by creating this opportunity is pretty unique. It would be a lot of work, but it might be a nice opportunity for our children, our community, and our families. So the initial grant, we've kind of drafted the grant and put this, submitted the grant to the state. I'm not sure if we're going to receive it, but we certainly would need your support. We did receive support from the mayor who assigned someone to sit on the School Readiness Council, as well as Dr. Conway, also co-chairs the School Readiness Council. So we have community agencies that are interested and support for this kind of thing, but we would need your support as well. Are there any questions I can answer?
Mrs. Bush.
I'd like to make a motion that the Vernon Board of Education approve the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood Smart Start Preschool Grant application, and if the grant is awarded, that the Board of Education accept it.
Is there a second? Mrs. Russell? Any questions? Mr. Kemp?
Patty, I'm not used to seeing anything that is projected to be funded for 9 years. Where does that 9-year funding sentence come from?
It's actually written into the grant, and the funding for this grant is actually tobacco money.
Is what?
Tobacco money. It's from the tobacco industry that they have specifically written this grant for early childhood preschool opportunities. So there is a sunset on this, and obviously that's a question obviously that we have with the board and as a leadership team as well. We talked about what if the money runs out? What happens when the money runs out? Where are we then? Well, we're capital improvement way ahead of the game because we've created opportunities for capital improvement, whether that be furniture or equipment, or certainly if we're in the community, the capital improvement is not part of this, but if we were created in the district, there would be capital improvement in the district. The grant is also written so that if the state says, no, you can't do it in the community, but we'll let you do it in the district, that we could use some of that capital improvement money in the district. I'm not sure if that's going to fly or not, but so I think the point was, do we invest for a short period of time while we can into the children that are at that age at that time? At some point, is the state going to end up going to universal preschool anyway? So I think we were just trying to say, well, let's get the most that we can at this time and use some grant money to do it. So that was the kind of logic behind applying for it, even though the money would sunset.
Well, you said sunset, but I'm reading 9 years here. I mean, I'm usually concerned about these grants and they go away on you the next year. That's sunsetting. Now, this is saying anticipated through 9 years, and my question is, where does the 9 years come from?
That was what they said. So it says funding
Okay.
not to exceed 6 years, but if we were to not get funded this year and get funded in 3 years, you would still have funding for 6 years. So up to 6 years, the district could receive funding. So if we didn't get funding this year and we reapplied next year, we could get it for up to 6 years, but there's a 9-year window. So that's part of what you're looking at.
All right, I guess. My other question had to do with capital improvements of $340,000 within this, and these 3 locations are to be receiving money that comes to the Vernon Board of Ed, yet I want to know what say we have as to, okay, so the YMCA, the Hockenham establishment, and the Academy of Arts and Learning. Now, who decides what's going to be done with this capital money?
So I would say that I had, and I should have updated this, but we had written this and built in some capital improvement. Since we submitted the application, we've discovered that they will not provide capital improvement to community settings. So the Vernon School Readiness Council may support these centers to apply for separate capital improvement grants that come to the state or are available. So in this specific grant, we would not be, if we're going to collaborate with the community, we're not going to receive any capital improvement grants. If
We're not?
Go ahead.
Well, it says here that we are. It says within, I don't understand
It said
this.
it wasn't updated though, David.
What?
This paper was not updated.
Initially when we submitted the grant, we believed that we could use capital improvement money. Since then, they said, no, you can't use capital improvement money in the community. You can only use community grants, which we may apply for, but if we were to get the grant as written here, we would not get capital improvement money.
Well, do we get $580,000 to be used for program and not capital, or what amount do we get?
No, we would get operating expenses, but not capital improvement, so that $240,000.
Okay, so we're requesting $240,000, not $580, because as I think I heard you say, there's no funding for these other entities.
That's correct.
Oh.
Part of the grant there was a certain amount of money in there for capital improvement, which would include some capital improvement for the Vernon Public Schools in order to transport food to these centers if we were to do that. I'm not sure if they would approve that. I'm anticipating that the State Department will come back to us and say, you can do this collaborative, but we're gonna only fund the operating expenses, we're not gonna fund the capital improvement, if they approve our grant.
All right, then the motion really was implied that it was a motion for 580,000. I forgot who made the motion.
Mrs. Bush?
Okay.
There was no monetary
There's no- okay.
reference in the motion.
Well, then, in your motion, it's understood then that we're only asking for 240,000 then, right?
Correct, but the monetary amount was not cited in the motion.
Okay, all right, well, so then,
Mr. Clayton?
Well, bearing that in mind, in order to bring these entities up to the standard required, would the board be responsible for the 340,000 if funds couldn't be acquired from some other source?
No. We chose these 3 sites because 2 of them are already NIAC accredited and the third one has applied for NIAC accreditation. Those are the requirements of the grant that when we wrote the application. So capital improvement money may improve it, but it's not a prohibiting factor in these centers. So for example, we actually just had a meeting recently with all of the stakeholders for early childhood, and we discussed some of these things. For example, one of the sites may not have a handicapped accessible bathroom. Well, we have so many options for preschool that we would not put a student that has difficulty accessing the bathroom at that site. We could put them in one of our school sites or maybe another site. So we have some options, so I don't think it would limit us. And no, we would not
One
fund those.
additional question, Academy of Arts and Learning, where's that located?
Is that 72? It's across from like Paul's Pizza. I never get that number right. Is that Route 72?
Right, it's a strip mall, or what's in there?
Between the 2 lovely hills.
On Route 83, on the east side of
83.
83, just down from the Vernon Gardens but on the other side of the road.
Okay. Yeah, I was getting that confused with one that has a similar name in Ellington, so.
Yeah, this is.
From the high school straight down through
Yes,
the woods,
go right through
down
there.
into the
Okay.
Route 83 through there.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lark?
Penny, when Mr. Kemp questioned you about the position it puts the program in if the funding goes away, you mentioned that we'd be ahead of the game because of capital improvement money,
Right.
but we're not getting any capital improvement
It
money.
depends. So in the grant, we did, being unsure whether or not the state would even fund this, we could move these programs, at least some of these programs into the school. So if we were to do that, and so I wrote that in the grant, that if we were to not engage in the collaboration in the community, but that they would be willing to fund us, that we may use capital improvement money. For example, if we were to expand a classroom, we might need a bathroom. So, so if we were to do that, there could be some capital improvement to our district, as well as, you know, the kind of food processing piece.
So that capital improvement would come out of the $240,000 award?
No, and so.
I'm not understanding this.
That's okay. So there were two parts of the grant. There was the first part that, there were 2 parts. One part is capital improvement. And so if we were to create this collaborative, initially we thought we could use capital improvement money through this grant to
Right.
kind of bring these sites up to speed. That's not the case.
Right.
So, but that chunk of money, if we were to move the classroom, one or more of those classrooms into the district as opposed to in the community setting, I'm assuming that we could use some of the capital improvement money to improve a classroom. If we can't, then it's not viable, then we may not be able to accept the money this year. We might have to wait another year if we want to make capital improvements in the school district for a classroom. So there's the capital improvement portion, and then there's the operating expenses. So there's salaries and professional development money, that sort of thing.
And it'll be district staff in
Yes.
these, ultimately, these 3 places.
That's correct.
You mentioned the school readiness. That's a budgeted item for the board, correct? It's in our budget?
We budget half the salary of a shared school readiness liaison with the town. So Allison Altieri is the employee. Vernon Public Schools and Vernon, the town of Vernon, pay half of her salary. She's, I think, works 20 or 25 hours a week.
Okay. You mentioned school readiness, so I was,
I'm sorry, so, yeah, so that's part of school readiness. That's where that position is from, and so she reports to the School Readiness Council, so she collaborates between the YSB and the Vernon programs.
this is as clear as mud. And just the last sentence says the fundings will be available in May and then in July.
So if we were to, the way the grant was written, there are certain funds that are available in this fiscal year. So for example, if we were going to do capital improvements, some of the funding would come out of this year. So to improve, let's say, a playground or to update a bathroom. So some of the funding you can ask for out of this year, and then there's a certain amount of funding that you can ask for out of the following year. In order to capitalize and try to create as many opportunity or improvements as possible, we put some of the money in this year and some of the money into the next fiscal year, which is beginning on July 1st.
Is this a funding nightmare? I mean, an accounting nightmare, I should say. I mean, how do you keep it all?
We currently, so even, out of my office now, we have like IDEA preschool and IDEA regular and school readiness funding. So this would be an additional sort of line item, and so it's sort of like its own little budget. So it's just it is an added component of what needs to be done or managed. But I don't know if Mr. Picaro has any different feeling about that, but I don't think it's a funding nightmare. It just is. No, he says no.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, there's a motion on. Oh, I'm sorry.
As a note, follow on, this program was theoretically could last 9 years, and if the state all of a sudden decides that it mandates a universal program, and we have to pull it back in. The problem I'm seeing is that, the monies that we could have had for capital improvement won't be there. We'll lost out on that. I don't know, would you care to comment a little bit more on how a change like that occurring midstream would impact the program?
Sure. I think that one way or the other, if we create the programs in the community has a benefit. I think the parents have a benefit. Those operations continue. If we were to, we could create it now in district and say, forget it, we don't really care about those other agencies, but we do care. And it is a nice opportunity for students to have different learning environments, especially when they're 3 and 4, to have different environments that might fit their needs better. So at the end of time, and someone says there's going to be universal preschool, number one, I think in order to do that, there will be some funding. There would have to be some funding because communities across the state of Connecticut couldn't just make it happen, just like full-day kindergarten. But I think if we ever get to that point, I think that there would have to be some increased funding. Do I think we'd be better off for having run additional preschools and provided more students more opportunities for an earlier education? I think we would be. And I think, when we are providing high-quality early childhood programming for students, we're having a better opportunity at decreasing the achievement gap for students as they grow older.
Well, as a follow-on to that, these are facilities that parents currently pay for the services. All right, now if the idea is to reduce the achievement gap, you're kind of reinforcing those students whose ability to pay to begin with is better than some others in the community. How would you address the needs of students who parents can't afford that service of a child care service such as Hockenham or the arts?
These programs would be run through the Vernon Public Schools, so they would be, it would be at no charge unless we were to charge a small sliding scale fee, which is what some do, but parents may choose that. And but also in this case, like we said, 50% of the students would have to qualify for free and reduced, or 60% of the spaces would have to go to 75% of the students that are at or below the state median income. So just by definition of the grant, it would be, I think, a mixed group of students.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions on this? Okay, there is a motion on the floor to approve this grant and accept it if awarded it. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now on to the other grant while you're here.
Okay, the next grant is the Federal Preschool Development Grant. This grant came through the federal government, and it was Connecticut's response to writing a grant for Race to the Top. So in the past, Connecticut has not received Race to the Top funding. This was, Connecticut had decided that they would write a grant for Race to the Top. And so it's 14 communities that have lower socioeconomic kind of, or need students in it. And so when the state was putting this grant together, they called and they said, would Vernon be willing, or would they be interested in using federal expansion grant money for providing preschool for our students? So again, in theory, this makes sense. If we have students in need that are not participating in any preschool opportunities, and we think that that would help them in elementary school or long-term in life, then yes, we should consider this. So we engaged in a conversation. Again, we were involved with Alan Silverdean and School Readiness Council, because this funding is going to come through, again, the School Readiness Council. That comes through the town, and then the funding comes to Vernon to operate the programs. We currently have some school readiness slots, and so this would be in addition to what we have. So this new grant would be, in theory, a 5-day program, 5 full days, and would service 4-year-old students. When we initially wrote the grant, we considered expanding one of our classes, so we have 15 half-day slots. So we talked about improving those 15 half-day slots into 15 full-day slots, and then adding 15 additional new slots. That was our initial proposal from Vernon, and this EOC again said, would you take 18? And so we said, okay, 18 students in each to improve the 15 slots, 15 half-days into 18 full-days, and then create 18 full-day slots. So next year, if we were to receive this funding, if the board were to accept this funding, the state has already been awarded this funding. Vernon will receive this if it's accepted by the board. We could offer 2 full-day sessions of preschool it would be geared for 4-year-olds And so we would have an option of full-day programs for 4-year-olds for a total of 36 students being serviced.
Mrs. Bush?
I'd like to make a motion that the Vernon Board of Education approve the federal preschool development grant application, and if the grant is awarded, that the board accept it.
Is there a second? Second. Mrs. Russell? Any questions? Mr. Kemp?
Patty, I'm going to assume that these are Vernon resident students, that this is not a regional endeavor?
You're correct.
Okay, and is there some accommodation to assure residency?
It would be the same as we do for all of our students. So all students, when they register in the Vernon Public Schools, have to produce proof of residency, you know, they're Vernon Public School students. So it would be just like any other student. If we ever had a question, we use our residency counselor to verify their residence.
Does that
we do
apply
that.
for preschool as well?
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mrs. Ard?
It's $529,000 over 4 years.
No, that's in 1 year. Some of the funding, just trying to get this here. Some of that funding would be used for staffing. We also have requested that some of that funding be used for a family advocate type of person who, in our Vernon Preschool Collaborative, we receive the benefit of ESCON, or Head Start, family advocate type of people who work with families and connect with families. So this would be part of the funding as well. Part of the funding is used, I think there's about $30,000 that's used, it's mandated as part of the grant to be used for mental health services. So because this grant is targeted for families or children who are at 200% at or below the poverty level, they anticipate that there might be mental health needs associated with some of this, and so it's not necessarily the case, but they do require us to contract with a mental health provider, which is part of the grant. There's, I think in the explanation, there's some startup funds, there's some, capital improvement, so equipment for the classroom, that sort of thing, mental health services, and some professional development funds, as well as transportation funds.
So this is just for 1 year, and you would be reapplying?
This grant, I'm sorry,
It said 2016 to 2020, but you just said to me, no, it's not.
oh, the amount is for 1 year.
Okay.
So yes, I'm anticipating this to be similar to like the IDEA grant. It's not that you could apply again, that they expect the funding to be in place until 2020. So yes, you would reapply for that amount.
I understand your argument about, well, if we lose, at least we gave these kids an opportunity. I always worry about what then becomes the board's responsibility for funding. That always concerns me. And then how fair is it to put something into the community that you believe is very worthwhile to simply put away, or the board has to make that decision about, sorry, we're not funding that again. So, I hear what you're saying, Patty. It's just it's not something that I get excited about at all.
I know it's a risk.
Yes.
Mrs. Bush?
Are you talking about you're talking about 2 full-day preschool classes, correct?
That's correct.
Do we have any idea where we might house them?
Well, in the grant, we did identify the location of these 2 full-day classes together at Center Road School. They have very large preschool classrooms that are lovely, as compared to some other schools have smaller or normal size classrooms. However, just last week, as I mentioned earlier, we had a stakeholder meeting with with early childhood providers from EastCon and the town and the community agencies that were interested, attended. Dr. Conway, Mr. Berg, there were, several people that were involved. And so we've talked about, does it make sense to put them both at Center Road? And so there were 4 categories, big categories, that we were doing some kind of questions and answers and exploring the best opportunities. Initially, the grant was written for it to be at Center Road. That doesn't mean it has to be there. I think we could request that it be located in a different building. So right now it's written in Center Road School. That might change based on what we consider to be the needs of the district. There are 2 schools, Skinner Road School and Lake Street, who only have 1 class, 1 preschool class in their buildings. So it might make sense to put one of these classes there. That would leave 2 classes at Maple, 2 at Northeast, 2 at Center, 2 at one of those other 2.
Any other questions? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve this grant and accept it if awarded. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 7.4, Finance Committee report. Mara?
Through you, Madam Chair, we draw the board's attention to the finance packet and also an additional handout that was provided this evening at the Finance Committee to the members of the board. Tonight's meeting is the Magnet School tuition projections. It's a 1-page handout. If anybody needs it, please let me know. I'm going to go through the business and finance report, just hitting some of the highlights from our discussions in the Finance Committee meeting directly before tonight's board meeting. I'm glad to answer any questions and drill down deeper into any line item following the presentation or as we go through, whatever your pleasure is. First item, very briefly included is Exhibit A, is the budget worksheet for next year's proposed estimate of expenditures that will be provided through the superintendent's office to the mayor. This is the summary of all the work of the Board of Ed for all of the adjustments that were made to the original proposed budget, both additions and subtractions to that budget. I apologize, the font is small, the numbers are big, but that is a summary of all the work to get us to this point in time. Next item, consistently in the finance report, is the executive summary of all of our accounts, our local, our grants, our student activity accounts, any revenues to date, any adjustments to our transportations and action taken. We went through that in our Finance Committee. And following that is the detail behind the year-to-date for our current fiscal year. You will notice that there are a few line items in the personnel that are still negative. We are actively working to provide the board with a solution to that. I'm not concerned about it at this point in time. It will be in the form of a budget transfer and/or amendment and will be presented to the board at a future meeting. Same holds true for our town pension account. That is showing a negative $90,024 as we expected. Unfortunately, after our budget was passed through actuarial reviews of the town pension fund, we need to contribute more, and the details behind that are actually included in this business and finance report if you're interested in looking at those. I would like to draw the board's attention for a brief discussion on our revenue updates. Superintendent had shared with the board a memo from Kathy Dempsey, the Chief Finance Officer for the State Department of Education, with the February estimates of revenue for each of the towns. Click on the link and it will give you the drop down for Vernon. So we included that in the business and finance report for discussion purposes tonight. First, just as a reminder, these are indications only. They're estimates, they're not final. The final revenue numbers we expect to receive from the State Department of Ed in April. But I think it's worth giving the board an update based on the information that the State Department of Education has provided to us specifically to address these excess cost grant revenue projections in our budget. If you look at the report on the backside of the memo for the town of Vernon Public Schools, at this point in time, they're showing a % impact to the uncapped entitlement of 13.53%, which means that the reimbursement rate would be 86.47% based on this information. Obviously, we know that it's not going to be at that point for several reasons. The primary one, many of the larger cities, school districts do not submit their majority of their reimbursements until the third and fourth quarters of the fiscal year, so that drives the total available funds down, and that directly impacts the available funds and the percent reimbursement for us. And so accordingly, Mrs. Dempsey had put in her memo that districts should plan on a 20 to 22% impact for the special education excess cost grant. And so if you run the numbers, I'd like to share those with you. At this point in time, we are showing in our local budget current deficit of $888,922 for our special education tuition line items, 55810 and 820 respectively. If you base it on a 78% reimbursement rate, as indicated from Ms. Dempsey, that would give us a revenue of $1,007,416.80, which puts us in a favorable financial position as far as our special education excess cost grant at this time. Puts us in the ballpark of $118,000 and change in the positive. As I indicated before, we also ran the numbers for our projected magnet school tuition, so...
Excuse me a minute.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, you kind of lost me in the numbers there. I was expecting you to say we'd be around 400,000 to the good. Would you go back over those numbers again?
Sure. At this point in time, if you look at what are in our local budget and year-to-date report, if you were to combine the two negative line items for what our special education costs are, we would be using excess cost reimbursement funds to offset.
Right.
That number is $888,922.
Okay.
Okay. If you look at what the State Department of Education has indicated as far as what we should be budgeting for and what we may see in our April final revenue figures, they're looking at a 20 to 22% recommended reimbursement or reduction to the entitlement, the total available entitlement for us, which means our reimbursement rate would be at 78%. If you run the numbers at 78%, based upon what's available from the state, not necessarily from us, but what funds are available from the state, that number would be $1,007,416.
$1,007,000?
$7,416.
Okay, so
80 cents.
now I got it. Now that's 128 and change. And so we're getting 78% when we had budgeted for
65%.
65.
Correct.
So we conservatively budgeted,
Yes.
and now we're pleasantly a little better off as a result.
At this point in time.
At this time.
Yep, that could
To the
change.
tune of 128,000.
118,000 and change.
118.
Yes, sir. As I was indicating, our magnet school tuition as an offsetting factor.
Yes, well, I know that's, yeah, by the way, those numbers don't add up. You'll notice that over here, you've got two columns of figures and two different totals.
I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell, which column are you referring to there?
Well, the third and fourth column, you've 617,000 and 406,000, and they're identical figures in either case.
What's that?
The estimated 2015 tuition, you have each by each school, and then you have the actual invoice by each school.
I believe that some of them have been backed out as far as to be paid.
Well, I don't know, I mean, okay, so you got some footnotes over here, but when you add up these totals, you've got a 617,000 and 406. That's what you display. So that's hard to understand why you display them differently like that. In any event, that's 200,000.
Through the chair, that's to what we've actually been invoiced and paid out to date. The estimated tuition is what we used when we got the new tuition rates and then our enrollment from October 1st. Then we, as we're bringing in as my secretary is bringing in the invoices, she's keeping a running total of what we paid to date. So to date, and again, this was from our board packet, I think a couple weeks ago, it was $406,000 approximately, what we actually have billed out yet. I'm sorry, paid out.
Well, you understand my confusion.
Yes, I see your confusion, I apologize for that.
That's all right. So,
In clarity, that final column should only have amounts that we've actually paid, so.
Well, some of them are in bold, are those the ones that have been paid?
Well, even if you do add up the bold, just the bold, there's not $200,000 in regular fund. So I will clarify that for you, I apologize.
well, I guess I want to make sure we're only at a deficit of 83,000, not 200. When you get down to the bottom of the spreadsheet here, you show an estimated budget deficit of 83,000.
Correct, that is an estimate.
Right, but that holds true. We're not working on any other numbers here, like in the 406,000.
If the way that 83,000 was generated, if you take a look at the estimated tuition, again, based on our enrollment numbers and based on the new fees that were given to us for this year. So I'll take the first line there, Academy of Aerospace and Engineering, October 1 enrollment 6 times $5,400 is $32,400. So you take all those items in that third column, add them up, it's $617,000. We have other LEAs, for instance, Connecticut River Academy, and that second part of the sheet there. So you add those up, that's $111,000 approximately. The grand total down at the bottom is $729,506. This is our estimate based on what we were told for the new fees, the new tuition fees, and the enrollment that were given to us. Sometimes what happens is the estimate that we have is higher because students leave between the enrollment date and the billing date. So that is, again, an estimate. And then the final column, and again, I apologize for that, should be more accurately displayed. That is what we actually receive in terms of bills. So we can say this is Vernon's best guess is third column based on the information we provided. The fourth column is what we actually are billed. Now at the bottom, again, that's our best guess compared to what we budgeted for this year.
So those two figures would come up to the 729 that you're talking about, right?
That is correct.
Okay,
So 645 plus the 83 is that grand total.
All right, so over to Michael's point then, we're 118,000 to the good in the special ed arena, and yet on the other hand, we've got the deficit in magnet schools of 83.
Correct.
So we're still a little above, a little better off, but not a lot.
At this point in time, correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Zark?
Just before we leave the magnet schools, why is there nothing for CBUG? I saw 8 students with a tuition, but there's nothing added in?
They don't bill us.
Really?
They haven't,
Sorry, I didn't ask you.
knock on wood.
Okay, moving on. For the next exhibit, Exhibit F, I wanted to give the board an update and get into a little bit more detail here as far as the revenue estimates that we provided to the town and where we currently are in the fiscal year for what we project to collect through the end of this fiscal year. So at this point in time, there's a difference of about $35,000 to $40,000 negative as far as our revenue estimates to what we project on collecting through the end of the fiscal year. We discussed at the Finance Committee meeting the contributing factors very briefly. There's some decrease in grant funds under the public school transportation from the state. We've seen on the opposite side an increase in special education tuition, including special education VOAG tuition, but then conversely we've seen a decrease in Next Step tuition and VOAG tuition for the current year. And so the net sum of that is in the ballpark of about $35,000 to $40,000 in negative revenue for this year. Keeping a close eye on that, and we will keep the board up to date on those particular line items as the monies come in and as they're billed.
So if I could.
Yes, sir.
So that kind of like takes the 35,000, we were at least better off, and now we're down 35,000 in that one, so we're almost like dead even.
We don't mix those two, through the chair, we don't mix those two, those funding sources at this point in time. This is just purely an update on our revenue to the town as far as what our estimates were for the town to count on for revenue generated by the Board of Ed at this point in time. We would not look for the general fund or the funds from the local budget to offset those revenues at this point in time. The next item are the budget transfers and amendments. There are several. There's no items that the board needs to take action on this evening, but there are several budget transfers in there. In addition, at the end of the transfers, by individual transfer, there is a summary that we include in every business and finance report. You can see at this point in time that we have transferred approximately $637,000 in change from the beginning of the fiscal year to date. Very briefly, you'll see information in there for our signed contracts and invoices for the consortium heating oil and diesel fuel contracts for next year that have resulted in us having the ability to decrease combined $30,000 for those two particular accounts for next year's budget. Quick update on our health insurance. We do not have final numbers at this point in time. The bids have gone out for both the Vernon Board of Education with Ellington Board of Education, Vernon Board of Education with the town, and the Vernon Board of Education on its own. I can say at this point in time, from several conversations with our insurance brokers, and based on our experience, we're looking at probably or high probability of changing carriers in order to reach our budget numbers at this point in time. So as information comes in, we will share that with the board, but that's probably the course that we're going to need to go in order to reach our budget of 17% increase for next year. Just briefly, informational purposes, it's usually asked for. The State Department of Education has released its net current expenditures per pupil, or per pupil expenditures. Vernon currently ranks 116 out of 169, with a per pupil expenditure of $14,232. There's a series of informational items in there regarding our audit for last fiscal year and for the fiscal year before that, with updates on the status of findings in our corrective action plans. You'll see information in there about the minimum wage increase that went into effect at the beginning of this calendar year. Bottom line, very minimal impact on the Board of Education payroll. There's information in there for your review on the feasibility study. That RFP has been published, as you know. A copy of it with all the changes that were incorporated for feedback from the board is included in the packet. We did have a mandatory pre-bid conference. There were quite a few attendees. Surprisingly, there was a mix between educational consulting firms and architectural and engineering firms. The bids are due, and there will be a public bid opening this Wednesday at 2 p.m. We are also hopefully in the final stages of our copier RFP, and I look forward to sharing some more of the details with you at the next meeting. As discussed at the previous meeting, the superintendent had mentioned that we did receive the second round of school security grant funding in the amount of $113,000 for this current fiscal year. That copy of that award packet is included in the finance report. Also included in there is an update on our last year's funding in the amount of $538,000 total. At this point in time, bottom line is we've spent 88% of that. And we're about 90% done with the work in the grant, and we expect to have that completed by the end of March, and an update will follow accordingly to the board. A couple other brief highlights. The roof project included in your packet is a brief outline of our roof project and when certain deliverables are due. Our main focus at this point in time is the EDO 49, which is the grant application to the State Department of Ed to qualify for reimbursement. As you know, the reimbursement is a key component of the total funding that the town approved back in December. And so that will be our focus to get that in for the July deadline. Also included in there is a reference to our third-party administrator contract that we're moving forward with. A copy of the Red Cross land use agreement. So you may see Red Cross trailers at Vernon Center Middle School. Just be aware, as discussed at previous meetings, that those are strategically placed there through this contractual relationship that the board approved with the town for us to keep those there for emergency purposes if we need to open up the middle school as a shelter. I also included, it's not in the packet, but mentioned at the Finance Committee that we're hopefully in the final stages of our school-based health center contract between the board, the town, and First Choice Health Centers. We discussed this in our Finance Committee. Bottom line, we've made changes to the physical plan. We've also looked at contractual language that's in our current service contract with First Choice. But what we think this is going to end at the end of the day is that it will be in the form of a lease contract between the town, the board, and First Choice Health Centers. And so that's the direction we're currently moving in and working with the town to get that wrapped up as quickly as possible. And then lastly, there's some information in there about some contracts that we've canceled with Comcast because of our new information technology fiber network. We no longer need those services, the wire services, because we're on the fiber. That will save us several $100s in our budgeted funds for this year. There is one action item that I respectfully ask of the board, and that is disposal of asset request from Rockville High School's Media Center. It's a long list. We're cleaning up. We're going through the schools. We're getting rid of things that we don't longer need. There's overhead projectors in this list, for example. There's some books in there that are no longer needed. And so we respectfully request the board move to approve that request. And by way of process, as a reminder, it would go through the board to the superintendent, to the town council for review before those items would be disposed. And our intent is to dispose of some of those items. They have no value. And the ones that do, we would put on our publicsurplus.com account and sell them for funds that would go to the town.
Make that motion that we approve.
To approve the disposal of assets.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's Exhibit Y.
Why? Sorry.
All those, any other comments on that? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, finish up and then we'll get back to you.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. The last item for informational purposes is included in the packet our budget projection through the end of the fiscal year for our food and nutrition services operations. As you can see, as in past years, we expect to end on a positive note, but I wanted the board to be aware that these are very challenging times, not just for our district, for the state, but also for the nation. I found a very concise article that will give you a flavor of some of the challenges that are happening nationally. And basically, we're seeing increased nutritional requirements from the USDA, which is good, but the offset to that is we're not seeing an increase in reimbursement rates, and some of the food choices that we're now being limited to, kids frankly don't like. And so that poses us with quite a bit of a challenge in order to run a profitable program that provides an efficient delivery of food services, and obviously that provides our students with a nutritionally balanced meal selection. And so we're keeping a close eye on it. We're holding our food and nutrition services program accountable, and we're working with them to make sure we end in the black for this year. And that's it. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Vernon.
Exhibit M.
Yes, sir.
There were 4 areas, and you touched on it very briefly. There were 4 areas that needed attention.
You're referring to, through the chair, the State Department of Social Services, single audit report findings, and our corrective action plans? Yes.
There were 4 areas needing corrective action. Are they completed?
Yes.
Okay, I realize some of the areas were not necessarily board doings, but town doings. But regardless, either way, well, the first one, for instance, where the town didn't have the forms and so on, and when they changed vendors, we couldn't provide the necessary documentation. So either way, whether it's town or Board of Ed processes, all 4 of the deficient areas are mitigated.
Yes, and
as we speak.
Yes, sir. And if I may just clarify, the language that you see in here is copy-pasted directly from the audit report finding.
Mm-hmm.
So when they refer to the town, I just want to make it clear for the record, it is the Board of Education. It is not the town. They had no liability or input into these processes. These are Board of Ed processes. It's just the way that the auditors write it.
Okay.
They look at us collectively as the town.
All right. How often is this audit done?
Once a year. It's the state and federal single audit. We're required to participate as being part of the town.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is our,
through you, and Mr. Picaro, there's no information in the packet, but you mentioned the school-based health clinics.
Yes.
And through no fault of your own, we've been hearing for quite some time that any day now, and you're telling me that the construction issues have been taken care of, and there's a language issue that has probably been taken care of. Can you estimate, is anybody giving you any idea when the clinics will open again?
Through the chair, I do not have an exact date to offer, Mrs. Arnold. Hopeful very soon, but to your point,
I know we've been hearing hopeful and
I
soon
know.
for a long time. It's through no fault of yours, but,
Thank you.
so nobody knows.
Any other questions for Mr. Picaro? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You did that pretty fast. Okay, item 7.5, discussion on Connecticut Association of Boards of Education Lighthouse District training workshops. We've had 2 workshops since our last board meeting. Does anybody even remember what? It's been a while. We met on December 15th and on January 20th. Anyone want to say anything? I can share some of the things that we did. We did a self-assessment of how we feel we are doing with our community engagement, and things that we saw that were important to improve were to encourage the parents and the entire community to share responsibility for success of our schools, and to promote high student achievement as a top priority. We also believe that we have high standards for our students and want to ensure that our parents and community have those high standards as well. And we believe that communication with our staff and community is a two-way process, and we need to provide opportunities for their input on key actions. And the last thing is we communicate with our local officials, or we would like to communicate with our local officials that our public schools need to be a top priority, and we need to communicate with state and federal officials as well. One session, we also went over a lot of our policies, and they kind of graded our policies and said that our policies were very good, and that they showed that the policies totally reflected our commitment to a high-quality education. So we met with Mr. Crusoe this afternoon, and we're going to have our wrap-up meeting on the 19th, Thursday, I guess next week on the 19th. So we feel like we've learned a lot, and we can move forward now and start doing some of the things that we talked about doing. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add? Okay. We'll move on to item 7.6B, because we already did. No, we didn't do A, but we did B.
Right.
So we need to do 7.6A, which is the Rockville High School and Vernon Center Middle School field study proposal. Mr. Picaro? Yeah, Mr. Picaro.
Through you, Madam Chair, that was the proposal that Mr. Klein and Mr. Peluso had referred to in their presentation. Essentially, the board had asked for a cost estimate of what it would cost for consultants to come in to address some of the concerns that are outside of the capabilities of the Board of Education. We utilized a vendor, as Mr. Peluso had stated, that's on, this vendor happens to be on state contract, so we were able to access them directly to provide us with a general quote for coming in, looking at, doing an analysis of all of the school athletic facilities, the fields, looking at some of the things such as realigning the fields and trying to maximize the use of the fields. They've also included, and it's a very big and scary number, everything and anything possible, including the possibility of putting in turf, artificial turf in the fields. And so that's what you see before you. Included also in that figure is their administrative costs for conducting the survey and bringing in consultants to actually do the work. So you'll see it's broken down into 2 parts. The actual survey itself, and what that will cost per location, and then if we were to actually do all of the work, and that's the big scary number at both of those locations. So it would really, for you, Madam Chair, a starting point for discussion to at least provide the board with a ballpark of what those categorical costs would be, to do an analysis, and then to actually do the work at each of the locations. And we could certainly, go back and get additional details. But in the interest of time, accessing this vendor directly as a state contractor, who happens to know the town, we felt that we can get some numbers to the board to react to, and then we could certainly go back, put it out to bid as we would if we were to pursue any of these particular avenues.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, to react to, I mean, that's real easy. But, there's no money. I mean, so this was lovely, but how do you go forward when you don't have anything in your checking account? So that was really nice, but I just don't see how it's even worth discussing any further with the dollar amounts that are represented. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I thought, yeah, that's really nice, but no way.
What are other people's thoughts?
It is a lot of money.
I don't know, are you going to say something? Yeah.
I have to agree with Ms. Arndt. It's wishful thinking right now. I mean, I think we want to deal with the issues inside the classroom and, bringing student achievement up. There are a lot of priorities there which require a lot of dollars. The fields are great, but they don't make the kids smarter.
Right.
It does make a well-rounded kid, and I'm not against sports, but I'm sorry, that's not where our priority has to be right now as far as our dollars go, I don't believe.
Are there grant dollars that pay for field improvements? I mean, is there money out there that doesn't have to come through the town? I'm sorry, through you to Mr. Vernon.
Wealthy citizen.
Pardon?
You're a wealthy citizen.
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the numbers are that big where we need to look, we would look for those kind of dollars. I'm not aware of any grants at this particular time, that we put that kind of bill. But there could be some out there that we may be eligible for and we explore, potentially look at, but I don't believe in its entirety, unless we found a wealthy donor to endow some of those.
Well, I think Mr. Hull said it much better than I did, that we got other priorities right now, and if we had that kind of money laying around, we'd find many other ways to spend it first. So I guess without expending too much time, if you find that there's that kind of grant money out there, maybe it would be worth a discussion at some point.
Anyone else? I would see some value, I'm not saying we have the money for it, but I would see some value in the schematic design and the design development only, and comes to a total of about $19,000, which is still a big chunk of change, don't get me wrong. But I think we might learn something from that on how we can improve what we have and maybe phase it in over, I don't know how many years. But that's just my thought. Mr. Wolf?
Just to that point, we may already have some information from when the school building renovation projects went on. I know they did some studies of some of the facilities when they did that project, and we might find some of that information in the binders that the architect provided us. Because I know they looked at the field. We didn't do a lot of renovating or changing to the fields because of cost. But there may be some information in there. I can't recall all the detail, but I just remember them looking at the fields. And I know there was some alignment issues at the high school that they said if we did this, we'd have a better field, a safer field, whatever. But it was something that the architects had provided us during that study, during the renovation project. So we may want to look in that, just see if there's that kind of information available.
Can you look that up for us? Okay, that would be great. All right, thank you very much. I'll move on to item 8.0, to review and update the Board of Education calendar. Have anything they want to add or comment on the calendars? Okay, 9.0, opportunity for questions from the press. Okay, Mr. Gould.
Motion to adjourn.
For a second. Mr. Polina. All those in favor?